Welcome to the Republican Professor. Today we have a very special guest. Unlike all of the other non-special guests that we've ever had, we have Matt Peterson. Hi, Matt.
Great to be here. About time.
It's good to see you. Matt, you are joining us from Texas, as the sign says behind you. Is that right?
Yeah, I snuck this sign in here.
You may all go to hell, but I will go to Texas, is what it says.
That's a line from Davy Crockett losing
Oh,
losing his congressional seat and saying to everyone in, is that Kentucky? I should know this.
yeah, I think it is
Um,
Kentucky. Maybe.
he said, yeah, you can all go to hell. I'm gonna go to Texas, and then he went to Texas and ended up at a place called the Alamo.
Well, yeah, I have a Davy Crockett Bowie knife, and it's got a horse slash alligator thing on the handle. So I'm not sure where the alligator comes in. Was he in Alabama or was he in Mississippi or something for a while? I don't know.
He could, I mean, it could have been. I was thinking the other day, I need to read the guy's biography. All I know is he went to Congress, he became kind of this, kind of a celebrity for the hat and
Yeah.
everything. It was sort of like purposeful what he did,
Hmm.
and was very popular. But then some weird political stuff happened, and he lost, and he ended up at the Alamo. But that was
Yeah.
my line. A friend of mine leaving California. I'm sorry, I have a dog barking, and there's nothing I can do about it.
It's
So,
okay. I like
um,
dogs.
I got a.
If you had a cat barking, we'd have a problem.
That's true. And then I should be making money off that cat in a different. Uh,
Exactly.
a friend of mine was leaving California actually, and had been in Texas before and was going back, and he alerted me to this line, and it's what I used when I left California.
Mm.
Not
A
that I
lot.
really want you to go to hell. I don't.
Okay. Let's introduce you. You're a man of many hats. I don't even know all of your hats, but I know that you have a podcast right now, and you were vice president of the Claremont Institute for a while. You have been a professor, an adjunct professor, as well as like a visiting full-time professor thing, right? And we have a personal connection. I think the last time I actually saw you was at Michael Uhlman's um, memorial for the friends and family. Uh,
Mhm.
and that was kind of an intimate setting. I usually take pictures of stuff, and I didn't take any pictures from that. So I'm kind of sad about not getting pictures. I'm usually the picture taker person.
Mhm.
People are annoyed with me at the time. They're like, "Oh, don't photograph me." And then 10 years later, they're like, "Hey, do you have any pictures from that time?" So I'm always thinking like 10 years ahead, trying not to regret moments past. But so that was what, 2019 maybe, or something like
Something.
that.
Yeah.
So were you
Yeah.
living in California in 2019?
Yes. Yeah, I
Okay.
was.
I think that's very interesting. So you are an academic-y person. Well, how would you describe yourself? I don't want to put you in a
I,
box.
I don't, yeah, I mean, the main thing is you can't put me in a box. I don't put myself in a box, and I don't like
Mm-hmm.
being put in boxes.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really have a ready-made, this is what I'm going to be when I grow up. I work in politics, media, business, but mainly politics and media, I would say, over most of my life, and definitely an educational background. Like many of us, I wanted to change the university. Um, saw it needed structural change, and then realized like time's kind of running out. It's past the point of no return. I think the only way to change the academy is you got to be in charge of the institutions. And so I don't know. We can talk about it comes out than what everything else I do, but media, politics, education, it's all stuff I've been up to.
I remember at lunch that we had at, do you recall this, at Loyola Marymount University? Because you were teaching there and I was teaching there. and you
Yeah.
had taught at Pepperdine, and I was teaching at Pepperdine, and we always seemed to miss each other. And
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. We were like in
for
the
a while, yeah,
same. Mhm.
yeah, and we were kind of commiserating, and so I'm impressed with you know some of the I don't keep up with everything. It's hard for me to follow everything, but um, I am listening to your podcast. I'm on the George Washington lectures right now from last year, so I do bit by bit, a little bit by bit, a little bit. I start at the beginning. With any podcast, I start at the beginning, and I try to work my way through
Mhm.
if I think it's worth listening to. Um, but I'm impressed with your mindset, and it has been challenging to me um, because I'm still here in California. But we're here because of my wife's business and
Mhm.
our church work that we do here, and
Mhm.
I do some teaching here. But so you're kind of like an entrepreneur, right? You kind of would you describe yourself that way?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have an entrepreneurial spirit, I think, and I came out here to, yeah, to start a business that really was going to start more businesses. As we sit here today, I'm thinking about um, starting a production company with a team of people that I've had make content for American Firebrand Super PAC and now Firebrand Action, the C4. That other people want them to work on things, and it's a good crew. So I think they could make stuff for the C4. We're gonna have the Twitter files, the first video series on the Twitter files on each of them. That'll probably pop out in the next week or two. So like, yeah, I don't think within boxes. I do think in an entrepreneurial way, and I've started little things here and there over the years. Um, but I was still really trying to do education. And then once I freed myself
Mm.
up and said, well, I'm not going to do this anymore, I kind of threw up my hands like, I was trying to do good things, God. Trying to do good things. I didn't want much. I wanted to change the world through education. But, I was sick of banging against my head against the wall there. And once I said, I'm going to go out and make money, then all of a sudden I got a call from Claremont, Ryan Williams, our friend from Claremont Institute, grad school friend as well, became president. And I thought there's no way I'm going back there. But I know I got to get out of the academy.
Yeah,
So I'll hear him out. And Ryan just became clear. He wanted to do some. He was going to do some stuff and allow me to do some stuff. And so I did go over there during the latter part of the Trump administration. That was a wild ride. We did a lot of crazy stuff, a lot of good stuff, and but it created new things there, like the American Mind. AmericanMind.org was edgy online publication for the right, still is. We did a lot of stuff that was groundbreaking, publishing people and ideas that were controversial, getting people to look at kind of what the scene looked like. And in a sense, it was like Claremont was rebranded. I wouldn't say some people liked it, some people didn't, but me and other people that Ryan brought in, we moved and we created some new things. And the American Mind was one of them. I was happy to bring James Polis over on that. I did a great job with it, helping to build it and just think new thoughts on the right. I tell you, the audience for it, like I got a bunch of flack from older people, conservative people, but they would be like, the audience is like, who are these suits online? And they're a bunch of kids in their mom's basement. And the truth of the matter was a lot of them were like 55-year-old hedge fund managers,
mm,
who were
yeah,
just looking for some sign of life. And in fact, there was a very serious audience there,
yeah.
as well as probably some people in their mom's basement. Nothing wrong with that. Where I live.
Depends on how big the basement is.
Yes, and I look, I did that for a while, and it was, we did a lot of the fellowship programs. We got a lot of great people coming through there. I took some chances. Some worked out, some didn't. But for the most part, they became, I think, a kind of a cool thing that everyone really wants to, even cooler than they were before. Everyone wants to be there, and they want that Claremont fellowship for a reason, because they see that they're moving forward and reforming the right. And so that's all good. And I had an entrepreneurial spirit about that. We're going to refound the right, or build a new coalition. And then once 2020 happened, the election, literally that day, I kind of thought, this is not, this is going to be a crap show over the next few weeks. And, I didn't know January 6th was going to happen, but it doesn't surprise me. And I just thought, we just need to go do whatever we think needs to be done. I think a lot of people felt that way. And I knew then, like, the nonprofit was good. I'm proud of what I did with Claremont. I still work with Claremont, all the time, in official and unofficial ways. But I saw, like, what needs to be done is more commercial and cultural. And we have a sliver of time to create a media apparatus and a commercial cultural movement that is, to me, like the last kind of best hope to create an engine that then can help retake America. So it's like, even when I'm trying to be just entrepreneurial and make money, I still not trying to do good, because I don't know, or I'm still mission driven.
Yes, you're an activist.
Yeah, maybe
I
so.
mean, I don't know if you use that term for yourself, but I've always thought of you that way. But let's go back to your teaching days.
Yeah.
So you're saying that as a professor in the classroom at places like, some of these swanky areas in LA, there's not much we can do. Let's dwell on that a bit, because if someone's listening to this and they're not following exactly why that is, like, how would you say what would you say the limits are, or the opportunities of being an activist professor, doing good work in the classroom? Why is that? What's the limits of that?
Yeah,
Or
that's a
the
good,
opportunities? I don't
yeah,
want to
a good
say it has to
question.
be limits, but
So I mean, obviously, the main opportunity is just the job itself. In theory, is really forming, forming people, forming human beings,
yeah,
forming hearts and minds, and um, every American likes to think of themselves. Every modern Western person likes to think of themselves as an individual who evaluates everything critically and rationally for themselves. But the truth of the matter is that people learn by listening to someone else tell them what's true. And
yeah,
ultimately, learning is about really seeing that for yourself. But this is just the way the world goes around. So there's two things to educate and form souls in our society, two major institutions. One is media, and the other is education. Media is actually more influential because it's there the whole life of a person. Hours a day, you're watching stories and everything else, and it's all forming your soul and what you think about things, whether you think it is or not. Everyone says it doesn't, but the reason advertising exists is because it does. Education is,
yeah,
getting really, formative years of someone. Ultimately, it is teaching them how to think, showing them how to find the truth, and allow them to see it. So in itself, like, this is one of the most important things that you could do. And
yeah,
the old professions, law, medicine, and being a professor, they've all disgraced themselves. But the reason that they were considered lofty, and they should, in a just society, they would be considered lofty, because you'd want people who are really good at the job, doing this important job, and you want them to identify as, I teach the youth, I heal the body, I am a lawyer, and I make sure justice happens. These are really important things. And so you want to give a special honor and dignity and keep those people accountable, and make a big deal about their role, because their role is a big deal. It has this effect. But I'd say that that's all true in theory. The problem, the limit is, now that the institutions that you're talking about themselves are so corrupted and so driven by an ideology that just to this point just ignores what most human beings throughout history have considered true. what
Yeah.
a man is, what a woman is, etc.
Yeah.
And it's such a toxic environment because the way that they ascribe, value to people, awards and honors are related to, the wokeness, the kind of identities, sexual identities, racial identities, um, and that is all pervasive everywhere as well. So it's not about academic excellence, and amidst all this ideological stuff, where it's not about truth, it's not about academic excellence anymore, and they won't even let anyone who, very difficult for them to allow anyone who thinks differently to exist, right, within their university.
Right.
Certainly someone who thinks probably some of the things that you and I do, along with millions of other Americans, they won't allow that, and they can't have it. It's also the case that as institutions they're failing because they are just sucking everyone's money into a big pot that they give out to administrators who make double and triple and more than what professors make. And they don't care about, all these people thinking, oh, this is a great school I send my kid to, and I pay, $80,000 a year for it. And they don't realize that, where's that money going? It's not going to the classroom,
No.
and probably half their classes at least, right, are adjuncts teaching who are making a pittance. And then you get the structural problem. The professor job is supposed to be like they leave you alone and you do your thing. It's like a Jedi Master job. So it's like, yeah, you don't make as much money as you could doing other things, but it's a noble, it has no nobility, like a prestige to it in some way back in the day. And you have like your domain of authority. Like you get to actually study this stuff, and to some
Yeah.
extent, they leave you alone.
There's a lot
Problem
of
no,
discretion.
yes, yes. Like a partners in a law firm, like
Yeah.
you go do your thing, and it's not like,
You're
you
not
have,
micromanaged.
yes, yes. But the problem is, of course, as you and I know, they don't leave you alone now.
No.
And so the structure of things falling apart. So here's what you got to think. You got to think you're going to go in, this is why, sadly, no one's even going in. Like our graduate program doesn't exist. Like no one's even going into this anymore on the right,
Hmm.
because you're going to go into a hostile environment where people
Yeah.
hate you. You're going to be micromanaged, and you're going to be in a toxic workplace. You're going to be treated like a slave, basically. Gone are the days of professors being, feted or treated. You're like an adjunct. You're going to make hardly any money, and you're going to have to struggle to survive for a long period of time. And this is something that I've lived, you've lived. This is a terrible situation to be in. And only someone who's really dedicated to the goodness underneath it all can really have the fortitude to keep up with it. So, it's a really, really bad scene.
Well said. Yeah, I wonder, there part of this is the culture, right? Kind of bottom up. The great inflation, for example. I think it's tied to the democratization of the whole thing, and it's complicated, but at the basic level, the students evaluate the professors, and what could possibly go wrong with that kind of structure, you know? Um, if whoever evaluates you is analytically your boss,
Mhm.
and that's just the way it always works. I mean, I've never been invited to evaluate my chair. They're very clear on that. I've never been invited to evaluate the vice president of of the university, but I get evaluated by my students, and so I think that's part of the degeneration that
Mhm.
I mean, I'm trying to imagine the medieval Oxford and Cambridge, and making sure we do student evaluations, for it's so absurd, and it's so odd, and the fact that the fact that parents don't find it to be odd and fight back is what really bothers me.
Well,
Because
right.
what kind of families are these? I mean, I don't understand how you could just so mindlessly send your kids. And I know that the kids, in some ways they do whatever the hell they want anyway when they reach that age. But what do you think about that? You're about to
I
say
think you're
something.
spot on. I mean, I think two tracks. One is um, Harvey Mansfield, one of the only good Harvard professors, and that
Yeah.
means what, in
Oh
his
yeah.
80s and 90s.
Yeah.
But he's up there.
Yeah.
He's at least decent. Interesting
Sure.
guy. There's a famous moment. I think someone published even online his comments to faculty meetings.
Hmm. Oh really?
And yeah, and in response to increasing um, the authority of, I think, student evaluations or something along those lines, he said, I am against them entirely because, as Aristotle says, it is the office of the wise to rule. So there's one approach, which is
Yeah.
people will roll their eyes at professors saying that, but there's one approach where it's like, look, the problem of education is you don't know anything, and so you want to learn something.
Right.
But then how are you going to choose who you learn from? Because by definition, you don't know anything because you want to
Yeah.
learn something.
Right.
And so
Right.
you're
Right.
going to put those people in charge. And so there is something to like, do you know something about the subject or not? If you do, then you shouldn't be evaluated by people who don't. So there's that. And I think though, even in the world in which student evaluations became a big deal, it wasn't good. It was this democratization, but you
Yeah.
could still like you've lived this. You could still kind of do your thing because students would respect like you cared about teaching. Like I know you personally, you
Sure.
cared a lot about teaching and
Yeah.
put a lot into it. And students would respect that even if they disagreed. What changed is when
For the
you
most
make
part. Yeah.
the evaluations really powerful, and then all of a sudden you get the ideological students who are like, this person is a whatever, racist, fascist, whatever,
Right.
and you made that normal, then all of a sudden, if you're on the other side, you're done, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
over.
Well, what bothers me about it is that there's a lot of discretion on the part of the university. This is where I see the nefariousness of the whole thing is there's a lot of discretion on the university as to whether or to what extent they use student evaluations for anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they're just there as a black file in case you want to get rid of somebody.
Yeah, yeah,
And
right.
that's what I don't like about it. It's like a constant file that keeps getting added to. And then later someone could go back in there in case they heard you taking serious the fact that the school itself has a men's room and a women's room.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how absurd it is. I mean, the school itself puts the word men on some doors
Mm-hmm.
and puts the word women. I mean, I didn't put that word there. It was there
Right.
when I got there. And I looked that word up in the dictionary, not that I had to because I speak English.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just draw out the implications of that in a thoughtful way, and someone doesn't like that, and it only has to be one person,
Mm-hmm.
then they can just add that to your, and then look back through your file. Oh yeah, I see you did have.
Oh yeah.
There is a history of, and they can spin it the any way they want, and it's kind of like oppo research almost. It's like a file for oppo research, and that's what I don't like about it. Because if an administrator likes you, they just ignore
Mm-hmm.
idiots, or whatever. But if an administrator is kind of on the fence about you, um, and then they find out your political something or other because you happen to either mention something or you brought in any kind of Republican thing and put it on your office door,
Mm-hmm.
just like everybody else does, except for the other party.
Yeah.
Um, then all of a sudden you have like they go through your file and stuff, and because it upsets students. And so, like the red state, blue state model thing, like moving to red states, I see the same problem in red states. And I'm not sure how you counteract for people that want to kind of hunker down and make the red state more red and more powerful, culturally and politically. I'm not sure how you counter that. And then there's the issue of the fear that administrators have of getting sued.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems to me to be a federal problem with judges and judging and law. And that's a problem with, to me, it's a problem with the Senate confirming judges in the presidency. And that's a national problem.
Mhm.
And, and I don't know the fear of lawsuits. I don't know how to counteract that besides the federal thing. I don't know if you can really insulate yourself in a red state from a federal lawsuit and fear of it. So I worry about those things, and I'm not sure what to do about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, you can't, it is one country, right?
Yeah.
Although it's more severely divided on more important issues than perhaps any country in history. And the only way to keep an empire like that with that kind of intellectual diversity alone together is by force and a caste system,
Yeah.
which is what's being developed. So,
Right.
radically disagree about what men and women are, what the family is, what the nation is, what human beings are, when human life begins and ends. I mean, there's no, like, these are two different universes. So, but the odd thing is we're still all here and it is a federal system. So
Yeah.
I think to some extent, of course not. I the way I look at it, and I should be more careful in choosing my words over the years. It just pisses all my friends off in California when I talk about this stuff. But I guess the way I would say is you.
Well, better pissed off than pissed on, as
Yes,
my as I that's what I always like to add to that.
yes, exactly. Um, so look, you could, the thing that I see is you can fight here. There's leverage. And
Yeah.
DeSantis is always the most prominent example of this. But for the first time, it really is historic to say, no, I'm going to put real people on the board of this new college, on the state school, and they're going to just refurbish it. And in the past, right, Republicans would have been like, oh, well, that's not academic freedom or something. And, doing the same thing that the left has done for decades.
Yeah.
So I do think, and then you get state laws where you can help mitigate some of the stuff against the Fed. So when it comes to the lawsuits, there's a certain aspect of that that won't change, but you certainly could change the culture of the entire school and say, we're not doing DEI stuff here. We're not hiring in the same way. The board of trustees, drives me nuts in Texas, but because it drives me nuts, I can put pressure on people and do something about it here, where we're going to have full campaigns about the governor picking those boards as trustees in the public schools. And there's a lot of people here who are still donors, unlike in California, who are mad about what's going on at the state schools, but they need to be told, you want to change that? We can. You
Hmm.
tell the governor to stop putting like fancy squishes, on these boards. You need to you got to overhaul the whole thing. You can't do it cosmetically. You need a leadership team that's going to hire the right way for people to actually, and if you did that, you would have world-class universities.
Hmm.
So will that happen? I don't know, because you're right, it's bad everywhere. But there's a path to that in these states, and you can make that argument and try to push it to happen. And certainly there's some of this going on with in Florida and here. Not enough, but it's moving in a positive direction, I'd say.
Yeah.
But without, I don't want to pretend like, oh, Texas A&M, which people will kind of informally say is one of the most conservative state school of its size in the country. It's tens of thousands of people. Like, it's full of woke garbage. Like, it's not.
Sure.
I'm not going to pretend like even the best cases here are
Yeah. I
are
know.
all fine.
Yeah. Well, I guess there's like the Hillsdale kind of model too, where, and it's not either or. I mean, it's both and maybe, uh, where if you could get more schools, more money, so they could just say no to federal money, and then you don't have to worry about the lawsuits
Yeah, I
as
mean
much because they're not
there,
regulated.
clearly there's going to be more of that because the success of Hillsdale is one major bellwether here.
Yeah.
Where the other thing is there's a renaissance right now in K through 12 education. Right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's exploding. The classical education has exploded throughout the country. That can be public with charters like Great Hearts or some of these others, or it can be, um, private. But that's exploding. That's real. Where are those kids going to go to school? The ones who want to continue that sort of education. They're going to look at Hillsdale, which is why Hillsdale is near Ivy League acceptance rates right now.
Wow.
So Hillsdale could recreate, like create another university, another college of the same size, and basically not drop its admission standards. And they have what, $700 million in the bank? I mean, they're going to have the first $1 billion endowment for any kind of conservative school. So,
Wow.
so this is
That's
not, this is
awesome.
an enormous success story. And some of the schools that have differentiated themselves and made it over the hump that are again, like more classical or real liberal arts, for the Catholic schools like Newman Guide, the Christian, like the real schools trying to do the deal. The better ones of those are all taking off. Like the admissions has gone up. They're doing well. Some of them that didn't differentiate themselves enough or probably don't think will make it. But I mean, you're right. There's two tracks. One is really think seriously about really overhauling. First example of it is really what DeSantis is doing, but other states are thinking about it. The state system, which you can do, those people are there. Put Lucas on the board tomorrow if you're listening. But this is the kind of thing that can be done. And then on the other side of it, these outlying institutions, I mean, there's not enough of them, but they're experiencing growth. They really are.
Hmm. You talk about woke capital, and what can be done to counter that. And that is definitely tied to the endowment issue and the freedom from all this crap, right? So, I mean, if you got more capital and then just like, more training on, hey, how to use that capital for good, like in why can't I, why am I missing the word philanthropy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Giving money to, if we could, I can't believe people give to these schools, these crazy schools. I don't understand it. Why do normal people give to these crazy schools? Why can't they divert that money to something? Is it just a matter of ignorance? I know this is two questions, but you got the woke capital question, and then you got kind of like the average everyday capital people that are their giving is messed up.
Yeah, no, that's very true. It's So let me start with the regular, kind of person who probably who leans right and is a donor to some of these places. I do think that we have to be a little bit belligerent about it. Some of these people need to be shamed into it because, look, it's just complacency and stasis. It was your alma mater, maybe it was your father's alma mater. Maybe you're sending your kids there. These places brainwash you at a formative time, and there's a football team and it's exciting, and you probably learned something. You probably didn't go into humanities. You learn something useful and went into business and were successful. You want to give back. Like a lot of it is, there is still kind of ignorance, although it's not justified anymore. Like you really should know better. But your own experience was not this craziness, and you're not really aware of what deeper education would be.
Yeah, I think that's
You
a big part of it.
uh, yeah, I think that's right. And so you don't really know what the alternatives are. But certainly now, a friend of mine, actually just calling, he coined this phrase. I think it's pretty good. Is they're going to take your name off the building. You got to tell these people like you're the wrong color. You're in the energy sector. Like oil's bad. They're going to
Mm.
take your name off the building. Your grandkid is going to be part of taking your name off the building because of what they're teaching them. And it's very hard. It's kind of mourning, right? If you were really part of this community, and you were kind of in normal America back in the day, and then all of a sudden you have to acknowledge, no, the entire institution, this college is intrinsically rotten, and I can't support it anymore or try to help it. That's hard,
Yeah.
you know.
Right.
It's hard. On the other hand, I don't think that they should. I don't like. We don't need to be told the problem. We know it from the inside, right? You
Hmm.
you know it from the inside, but the problem is they don't fully understand it. And to me, it is maddening because it's always like people are like, "Oh, is it really that bad? Wow!" It's like every 5 years
Yeah,
or so,
dude.
It's been
Yeah,
this way
it's
forever. It's
worse.
been
It's
bad.
actually worse. Whatever
Yes.
you think, it's worse.
Yes.
Like the No Safe Spaces movie with Dennis Prager, we saw that.
Mhm.
And and my wife said to me, I finally understand what you've been going through all these hard years. I mean, she knew, but
Mhm.
she finally sees it like on screen. And I said to her, I said, as great as that movie was, it's actually worse than that. It's
Yeah.
actually far worse.
Oh
And
yeah.
I don't think even Dennis Prager knows how bad it is.
Mhm.
Um, it's far worse than that because he that movie had said nothing about grade inflation, and that's a key part of the whole thing.
Mhm.
I think. I mean, if you can't, for lack of a better word, force. I mean, it's not the best word, but it's force
Mhm.
students to be excellent.
Yeah.
And I mean that in like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's even in the military now. I mean, I talked to a Marine Corps boot camp instructor, and he was telling me stuff that they do in Marine Corps boot camp. I could not believe what he was telling me.
Oh yeah.
It's totally different than when I went through boot camp. And I wasn't in the Marines; I was in the Navy. But it's horrifying to me, but it's also not surprising. So you have this there's a lack of excellence and in the schools, and um, it's tied to grade inflation, and it's all caught up in that, and um, that's tied into the no safe space thing. So yeah, it's it's unbelievable. I don't under. It's almost like we're just numb. I mean, I was talking to a friend of mine who I had on the podcast. He's a Canadian, and he's a really nice guy, and we're on the same views on things. I'm not sure where he is on the Second Amendment, but he was trying to understand. He tries to understand me, I think, and I think I finally got through to him when we were having coffee recently, and I said to him, I said, imagine this. Imagine if you had a school where academic excellence was gone. They take a school like Biola, for example, in California. Imagine that there was no concern for truth whatsoever in the typical student, and that the academic excellence is gone. There's constant activism, political activism, but I'm going to add a twist here. On virtually every single door of every faculty, and maybe even some of the administrators, there's Trump signs,
Mhm.
and there's American flags and NRA,
Mhm.
and
The good one.
anti-abortion stuff,
Mhm.
and it's just plastered everywhere. But
Mhm.
there's no concern for truth.
Mhm.
There's constant activism. In other words, students will not do their homework, but they'll go to the shooting range, an NRA convention. They'll protest outside of, but they don't do their homework. They demand A's, and it's all associated with the Republican Party. What would be the reaction from cultural commentators, from parents? But that is every single school in California, besides Biola and some other places like Azusa and stuff. But it's like virtually every public school, and it's on the other side, and we just think it's normal. Like
Mhm.
that, we're numb. That's normal. He
Yeah.
finally got it. He was like, oh, because he doesn't like Trump. I mean, I don't like him either, um but I did vote for him. but he understands why people would vote for him. But it's like, well, why is there this drastic
Yeah.
double standard? I don't get it.
Yeah. And
Horrifying.
it is horrifying. They've just kind of psyoped the whole populace and saying this is normal. It's not normal. Um, and they've the two things are related though, right? Because the doctrine they're espousing is denigrates the kind of academic excellence that we would want. But I think that's a great example. It really is, because that kind of school would horrify me and horrify you. Like, this is crazy. Like, you guys are ultimately going to do a lot of harm to your own cause, and this isn't a university. And look, go back to like the woke capital pouring in. Some of this money knows what you're saying is true and wants it to be that way, right? I mean, because activists that, a real activist without principles doesn't care about the truth or whatever, or education. Right. They just want to create foot soldiers to go out and do what they need them to do. So the pressure from, the feds, which is basically all on that side, and NGOs, and then other money as well. They want, they want people to be raised this way by the schools. But the fact of the matter is that a lot of the corporate money still comes from businesses that have to value excellence in some way, and they're living in a lie. They're going along, they're giving the money for all this woke stuff, and ultimately what they're going to create, and they are actively creating before our eyes, is a workforce that's so dysfunctional it's not good for anybody. And you'll have to hire people from other countries, because what they're doing is creating a workforce that is so dysfunctional, they can't be good employees. They won't be good employees. And this is also why business should care about the destruction of the family, right? I mean, if the right had its act together, it'd be like business, like climate change is the big issue for them. And that's the issue. We're all going to die if we don't do it. Well, the destruction of the family is the real civilizational collapse issue. And every business and every advertisement should be trying to convince me that they're going to address that crisis. That's what winning looks like, And so where is that, right? There should be centers talking about how do we save marriages in a practical way in this society? How do we convince people to have and raise children in a way? I mean, that's what a state school in a red state should be doing. We can't even imagine that, like you say, because we're such, we've been, people have been trained to just think in this losing way as losers. It's terrible. But what I'm saying is, like, the sad thing about the capital going in, the money being given, is that, some of it's just pure woke, like we want it to do this stuff. Others of it is just, well, we know that we're supposed to be woke and we write the checks to our alma mater. We support, the system. And the problem is, for anyone who thinks they're being moderate on this stuff, it's like, no, you are actively creating a dysfunctional workforce and populace that simply will not be able to perform in the way that you need people to perform in your business. And I mean, I don't think that even needs that much explanation. I think a lot of people realize that that's probably the case, whether they're in denial about it or not. I think we should say it more. It's like, you're contributing to the destruction of this country and this civilization in your own business.
Well said. How do you define woke?
Good question. I mean, you see all these people, like,
I get that question a lot
on the left, like, define woke. You don't even know what it means.
Well, I would say, what I always say is, I'm glad we're interested in the definitions of terms. Welcome.
Yeah.
Welcome. Where were you 10 years ago on marriage? But hey,
we want to define things all of a sudden. For me,
then I show him my MacBook Pro, my Apple MacBook Pro, and I look at the dictionary definition of marriage. It says a union between a man and a woman by which they become husband and wife. It's like a sui generis thing. It's hard to define beyond that. It's in my MacBook Pro.
Mm-hmm.
And 2013, whatever it was, when 2 years later, actually the Oxford English Dictionary in 2015, my Pepperdine students could not believe this when I brought the dictionaries in. I brought like 10 of them in. And I said, look up, they said, do you believe in traditional marriage? And I said, well, okay, pick up the dictionaries. And I seriously, I brought in 10. I spent like $100 at a used bookstore. And one of them was the Oxford, actually two of them were different versions of the Oxford English Dictionary. One was Black's Law Dictionary. And these were standard, legit dictionaries, heavy. And I said, don't go on dictionary.com where some idiot can, I mean, I changed the picture of Descartes on Wikipedia, and it was up there for like 4 hours. I put a picture of like a cat or something. So, I mean,
Just to
just
make the point.
look at the books for crying out loud. Turn some pages. So I said, on did you say what word were you looking up? Traditional marriage. Okay, under T, go look it up. It's not there.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, how about this? Look up M under M. I never say traditional marriage. I just say marriage. It's like when I walk into Trader Joe's, I don't say traditional apple. I want a traditional apple. I just say I want an apple.
Mhm.
Anyway, so they look and they were freaking out. They were like puppies at feeding time, around this table and
Mhm.
all looking up. I mean, couldn't believe it. I hadn't seen them that excited in a long time. And they were shocked, shocked. And I was like, welcome to the English language. That's like, it's not the Bible, it's English. But
Mhm.
anyway, sorry for going off on that.
No,
But
no, that's amazing. So did they think that did they say, oh, well, those books are old? I mean, like what
well,
were
the
the
first thing they go is they always say this. They go, well, but can't definitions change?
Mhm.
And I said, well, I'm trying to follow your sentence that you just said there, and I noticed you used words in that sentence. What do you mean by change? The word change. Do you mean traditional change? Because traditional change meant become different.
Mhm.
But the new kind of change means stay the same. So, and usually by this time they're like, what? If you look up the word change, it's in the dictionary too, and it means become different. And that's the traditional change, though. And, if the word change changes, I guess
Mhm.
it now means stay the same. But if that's the case, did it really change? By this time, they're just so in knots. They're like, "What are you saying, Professor? I don't understand."
Where
I'm like,
was
"Look,
this?
you're picking and choosing here, and if you're trying to, tease out the implications of marriage policy, you're going to have some kind of stable language. Why this word now you want to change for this reason and on what basis? And all of the court decisions have to have some understanding of that term.
Mhm.
So, so anyway, I was just getting into it, but it's a wonderful time, wonderful time. But I think I might have gotten you off track. You were saying something about um, the definition of woke.
Oh yeah, you wanted me to find woke. Where was that, by the way, where this class?
Oh, that particular class was Pepperdine, and I had a particularly woke group that year.
Mhm.
Well, at least I had some loud ones, and then a bunch of people that are just kind of going along with it, I think. But we were talking about Chick-fil-A. Can't remember how it came up. I think it was I was teaching Western Heritage, ancient and medieval. We were on Adam and Eve. So I mean, I was actually part of the. I
Yeah,
wasn't. It's not like I was angry at the Supreme Court and Obergefell, and I was like, I'm gonna use the classroom. No, I was just, I was saying this is now an issue of like what marriage is, and at that time, man and woman were not really confusing.
mhm.
I would say pretend confusing.
Yeah.
So I don't really think people are confused about that. But someone made a comment about Chick-fil-A or something, and I was like, wait, hold on a second. I'm not going to let that pass.
Yeah.
Chick-fil-A is not evil. There's a restaurant just down the street in Venice Beach called Mao's Kitchen,
Mhm.
and that's honoring Mao Zedong. And so we had this interesting discussion comparing Chick-fil-A and Mao's Kitchen. And I said, well, which is worse? And they said Chick-fil-A was worse. And I said, why? And they said, because he discriminated. And I Googled how many people did Mao kill. And it was like, there was a discussion in the Google results between 45 million and 78 million. And we can't quite tell how many tens
Uh-huh.
of millions of people that he led to their senseless and horrifying deaths. And by the way, these are poor people. These are
Mhm.
people with pets. And I said, does that help? They had cats. Anyway, we had this great talk, and then I was driving back, and it all had to do with the definition of marriage. They were so horrified by Old Man Chicken, and that they were, they were just ignoring mass murder.
Yeah.
And so, and the Ten Commandments was the next thing we were going to cover, which is, murder, not don't murder. And so it was all related and to the class material. And I was driving back down PCH, and I was like, Lord, how do I get through to these people? I've never had this kind of opposition and craziness. And I just felt like, I really did feel like a sense that it was almost like the Holy Spirit was gently prodding me to go to the used bookstore
Mhm.
and buy used dictionaries and bring them into class. So I did, and I showed them that Old Man Chicken was just speaking English, and
Mhm.
that's why you hate him. And whereas Mao is on the left and he commits mass murder, and you give him a pass. And they all got it after that class period. Every
Mhm.
single one of them got it. And actually, I got some apologies.
Mhm.
And I don't know why it takes that. I know that you can do
Sure.
good work in the classroom, but if you don't have
Yeah.
the support of administrators, and you don't have the support of
But
donors and the board,
we're
there's
often
not
too
much you can do.
scared to talk about any of these things.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, I mean that's a great example of teaching well in a way that that grabs their attention and gets them to think about things in a serious way. Yeah, I mean definition of woke. I mean I think
Yeah.
definitions like you say are important. I think the obvious root of this that just defines it is simply and I haven't pared it down into the shortest words possible, like a definition would in a dictionary.
Yeah.
But it is the concept of equity that all inequality comes from oppression of right now racial and sexual identity. They can obviously add to that. So the idea that justice, in order to enact justice throughout society, someone needs to reconcile all the bigotry and oppression, which causes all the injustice. And of course, that somebody is really everything, like business, government, right? All of it has to reconcile and equal level the playing field. I mean, I think that's at the core of what the wokeness came out of is that concept, which again is a concept of justice. I mean, what they mean by social justice, what they mean by justice is any inequality that's negative, right, has to be rectified because it must exist because of right now there's the evils of especially white males, but it doesn't have to be white people. They can add to the evils and they can add to the identities however they want. It's just about reconciling those two things, and so I think that's at the core of it. Now, I think that what it means in a general sense is also this kind of strident activism above all else, and anything is sort of justified in order to achieve these just ends, and so you see them excusing violence, riots and all everything else. So
Yeah.
something like that to me is what wokeness is, and I really think that there's justification for some description of equity as at the heart of it, as their notion of justice that then must be implemented by everyone who has any kind of power. Um, does that make sense to you?
Yeah. I mean, it's especially on the left, right? Um, but I guess, well, how would you define left? So for everybody to, in case these terms get thrown around, and might be like business people listening to this, and they kind of know what they're supposed to say, but they don't know why.
I I think the business look, the right left thing is almost meaningless at this point. I mean, I don't think that I don't yeah, it's a good question. What does it mean right now?
Right.
What has it meant in the past?
Sure.
I mean, traditionally, right, this comes from where you sat in the French Parliament, right?
Yeah.
My understanding. And on one side, you know, you have the good guys and the bad guys. Really, from the left, they kind of. I feel like that framework
Sure.
is sort of owned by them.
Yeah.
Um, but I would say that you mean wokeness is basically um, whoever describes himself as left of the Democratic Party and certainly rules the Democratic Party with an iron fist to the point that you have, say, in California, probably fairly socially conservative Latino machine politicians who don't care and look down on fancy college, going up to San Francisco to kiss the ring of very progressive individuals, and they have to vote for anything they want on matters of sexuality and culture, right? I mean, it rules the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
in that sense, it is left. Um, but the left is communism, the right is fascism in people's minds from the term forming over the last century. Um, I don't know if that works anymore, for instance, because a lot of what the quote unquote left is proposing and the woke people are proposing is very much akin to fascism. It's kind of
Yeah.
a oligarchic fascist, in terms of merging corporate power with power of government.
Sure.
So I think it's better to talk about like regime forms and what kind of structure of the country you're talking about, and get really concrete rather than even use the words right and left. I could be wrong about that, but I'm not sure they're useful anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I've always been puzzled by these terms. I'm puzzled anytime someone expects me to use a term that I don't understand. And so I always like to dip into it and figure out how I want to talk. And then I'm very upset when someone tries to make me talk different once I've thought about it.
Mhm.
So I've always thought of fascism, and I dipped into that, and I looked at some monographs from historians on fascism. And there's a book I read published by the University of Wisconsin Press by a Wisconsin historian who says that it's very difficult to define fascism, and it definitely does not mean conservative. He says that, and he basically says it's a type of socialism, and it's pretty clear that it's on the left. It's a police state kind of a mentality that I've always thought of. I mean, if you say the left is like socialism and communism, um, to me it feels like the police power at the expense of individual liberty. That's the left, and the right is, um, I guess, anything that would be more correct. um, but it's best I can do with it on that. Yeah, the color thing too. Red versus blue isn't. It's like, well, red is the color of communism. I don't know why we say that Republicans are red. Um, so it's some of these usages they're just so worn out that you don't even know. If you start thinking about it, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But I guess a lot of words are kind of like that. We just pick up a syllable and we attach it to something, and no one knows why we use the syllable for this, for that.
Oh yeah.
Banana, banana, you know, where'd that syllable come from? I don't know. Probably a history for it, but we just use the word, you know.
Yeah.
But so what do you like about living in Texas? Or do you like living in Texas? Tell us about your move, and do you regret it? Um,
No
in
regrets,
California.
that's for sure. I think
You're a family man, right? You've got a family, you've got kids.
yes, we have 4 kids, and
Hmm.
there's no one who's regretted any of it. My wife is from Sacramento. A lot of our family are in California, but the good news is everything's a short flight from Dallas after you're used to living on the coast. So you can kind of get around anywhere in, basically 3 hours or less. Um, maybe the most is 3.5 to anywhere in the continental US.
Yeah,
Plus, you
that's
can get
nice.
to the country in the same amount of time. So, it's like 2.5 hours. You get on a plane and you pop off. You'll be good. And we're 15 minutes from the airport, which is also a huge game changer for me. I was traveling a lot the last few years, and the
Yeah.
difference between 15 actual minutes from the airport to my door, as opposed to going to LAX, which in Los Angeles usually means,
Yeah,
at
you
least
have to
an hour to
rearrange.
get there. So that's been incredible. So I would say it's very convenient.
That's
At the
cool.
same time, of course, I'm leery of telling other people to move or whatever. Some people are going to complain no matter where they are. And obviously, the aesthetics of just the kind of flatter prairie country in North Texas is not the same as Southern California or any Cal. I mean, California is one of the most beautiful places in the world. So
Yeah.
you're not, I'm not trying to dial in the climate right now. I'm not focused in my life on like dialing in the aesthetics and the climate. We're in a situation where the country's falling apart and there's a lot of things to do. So I'm not like looking to retire in the perfect nuanced microclimate. I mean, I just don't really care at this point. And the things that I have been able to, and that stuff is real. It can be overrated in some ways. It can be underrated too, to be in a beautiful place. But I
Sure.
just, of course, that's the case. It's not as pretty, like duh. Obviously. But once you make that trade, then all of a sudden, I know so many people, many of whom actually were academics, who are teaching at colleges or whatever, like, from that level on to people starting huge businesses like Elon Musk, everyone comes here and does financially better. It's like within a year or two, they're, all the little intangibles from the price of like commodities and gas and that kind of stuff to your home price, even with the rise that's been going on the last few years, you trade off and you trade off. So obviously, financially, economically, it's fine. But of course, that's not the main attractor of everyone moving in the last 2 years. The Wall Street Journal even still pretends it is. It drives me nuts when conservatives, quote unquote, do this.
Hmm.
Like, oh, well, Florida has lower taxes, so people are moving there. And as DeSantis would point out, like Florida's had lower taxes than New York for like 20 years, maybe
Right.
ever. I don't know. Like
Yeah.
that's not what. Maybe some other things happened in the last 2 years to make everyone move.
Hmm.
So the other side of it is convenience. I mean, I'm Catholic. There is a wonderful community of people, the University of Dallas, which is a great liberal arts college. I live right near there. But there's many institutions of, I guess, what I'd call conservative Catholics or whatever you want to call it, all around here. So much so that a number of us started the PAC, which is not Catholic, it's for everybody, Families for Irving, to get people out to vote for candidates for the city council. And again, it's like, is there crazy stuff going on in Texas? Yes. But can I come to Irving, which is 250,000 people and probably more corporate headquarters for a city of its size than anywhere in the country, and change the city council? Yes. Can I do that in Pasadena, California, where I was? No.
Hmm.
And so the convenience, the community engagement, there's a lot of people we kind of moved with us so that we know,
Hmm.
friends from Pasadena who are 2 miles away there, 1 mile away here. And actually,
That's
Matthew,
cool.
he's on Twitter, he's a former actor. He is an actor still.
What's his name?
Matthew Marsden, it's a great guy. Um, he we're very dear friends of ours. We kind of moved together
Oh, that's
at
cool.
the same time. And there's other people, like I can drive around my neighborhood and show you people I knew in California and where they live. Because again, it's
Wow.
not some solo thing. It's like there's a whole community where you're K through 12. You got many options for your kids that are going to be acceptable. There's two great arts academies. There's two Hillsdale academies. Those are both charters and they're classical and they're trying to do the right thing. And they got a lot of good people there. It's a private Catholic school, going to. There's a Protestant classical school. Like it's all good. Like, so the convenience factor is I got everything my kids need within 15 minutes. I can go to the city center. It's like living in the West Side. Like I can be downtown in 15 minutes, I can be at the airport in 15 minutes. So the convenience of it is enormous. And That's all the really practical stuff, I guess. I would say the positives. I would say the more spiritual side of it, I guess, is just getting rid of the insane pressure. It just drops away. It fades away. And I think especially for a lot of guys, they're holding on to this. Well, I need to make it here, like as if if they go to another big city, it's a failure, you know. And you're sitting there going, you can't make it here. Like, be one thing that people need
Yeah.
to do with this stuff is be realistic. Like, what's success? Like, minimum level success where you are. If success is like it was probably in the area we were in, anywhere near within spitting distance from the school our kids were at, what do you need in a household income to afford a house? And I think at the time, and probably, probably even more now, you basically need $300,000 a year coming into the household to think about affording a house in the area of, this was in like near La Cañada, La Crescenta. And so, you draw a big circle around it with commuting, and you
Yeah.
basically get about $300,000 a year coming in to think about affording a house. And that's not even including like saving anything, right? Okay, well, how are you going to do that? Right? If
Right.
you are doing that and can do that and okay, fine, then you don't have a financial reason to move. But if you're not, and you're struggling under the weight of this, I was working at the Claremont Institute at the time, so I'm not, the president doesn't make enough money. I hope Ryan does now. I don't know, but I mean, they were a smaller think tank at the time, and there's no way if I'm the only one bringing in income, that's not going to happen, right?
Right.
So I'm thinking like, well, that's where I'm working now, and that's what I'm doing. So what else could I do? And But as soon as you get out of that, you can hold a lot of baggage in your head that you have to do X, you have to achieve X, and it's just not realistic.
Yeah.
Never mind the fact that I'm a friend of mine, I talk about this all the time. You're used to at restaurants when you talk about politics, like your voice layers, or you use like code words. And then he was describing here, and I felt the same thing. You're hearing like after like a little while, you're like, wait a minute, I can say whatever the hell I want. I'm still in America. I mean, there
Yeah.
were wild hogs at this state park, beautiful state park, south of here that we were staying at. We had got reservations 6 months in advance, kind of thing. Beautiful cabins by the river, beautiful area. So I see that there's a bunch of feral hogs there. So don't leave stuff out when you come. Just FYI, before you get here, some things to know. I'm thinking like, well, I should bring like a shotgun and a handgun and just carry it down there. But it's too bad that I can't do that because I live in an wait a minute. I live in Texas now. And I had to, even though I knew about constitutional carry, I had to go on the internet because it was so hard from California to believe I can literally just put this gun in my pocket like an American and the shotgun in my trunk, and we can drive down to the feral hogs. And I didn't never even put a clip in it, but I did have it on me, and they were there, roaming around where my kids were.
Hmm.
We scared them away otherwise. But like you could just do that, right? I
Yeah.
mean, just think about that's like a positive thing. Think about all the negative things you just assume you can't do
Sure.
because you live in one of these blue areas. Anyway, it can be psychologically freeing.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's big time. Well, you've probably thought about this. How do you, I mean, I'm almost embarrassed to ask this question, but how do you resist the Californication of
oh yeah,
the, I'm sure a lot of people are worried about that.
oh yeah, they are. Yeah, a couple things about that's interesting.
Nobody's worrying in,
No,
In California, nobody's worrying about how do we resist the Texification of California? I've never heard that conversation. So why is it always one way?
yeah,
It's
well,
like Eden. Eden is great, and then
yeah,
it's a crap show the rest of the Bible. Why is it always one way? I mean, there's little blips of, obviously, Jesus came, that was good.
yeah, that was a good thing. Well, look, I think good things are happening here, and this is what no one's talking about, and it's a little maddening to me because, um, I'm gonna have a personal stake in this. I moved myself. I moved
Yeah.
first because someone in business said, "Can you analyze for my boss where he should move? Like you're kind of a prognosticator and you see these things. He's got this whole thing where he could move." And the guy even wanted to pay me. And I was like, "You don't have to pay me anything. I'm curious myself." So I did just some real research. I talked to some of the smartest people I know in different places, and and triangulated, and I pay attention to things about the cabin. I'm able to move about the cabin pretty easily in this America for some reason. I get into rooms. And anyway, I realized I strategically needed to be in Austin or Dallas, Texas. And part of that was, even from that period, was, oh, well, what if they just turn California anyway? And
Right.
first off, the first thing people tell you is, well, if you go to Dallas and you go to Austin, you may as well be in California because they're just liberal too.
Right.
And here's there's so many this it comes from both people outside who don't want to move, who just say it's just going to change anyway, and people inside who don't want to do anything and say the Californians are ruining everything and it's not actually our fault, which it is. Okay. So there's two excuses inside and outside. So people have a reason to promote this narrative. It is absolutely false right now. Of course, there's a concern that the more people move, they just move economically, or businesses move hypocritically economically, and they bring in with them all these libs, right? Okay.
Right.
But that's not the real problem in Texas. The real problem in Texas are the complacent people who've been here forever, who've allowed their universities to go woke when they're in a Republican state, and they have nothing to prevent them from doing it except for growing a pair.
Yeah.
They could easily do what Rufo did, but they refuse to. That's the real problem. And I'll prove it to you. I mean, if it's the problem of all these blue locusts, they call them, right? All the people coming in and making it like California, if that's the problem, then why is it that in the last few years, Republicans have won by more and not less, with a governor, whatever you think about him, who has run to the right the entire time he's been in office? He's constantly doing this and looking at what DeSantis does and imitating him. He's not copying the left. That is a sign that you're winning. Why is he doing that? Does he want to do that? No, I don't think Greg Abbott naturally is like a hard right conservative on this stuff.
No.
But he sees where the base is.
Okay.
Numbers matter. We just won all 3 statewide races here: lieutenant governor, which has a lot of power, attorney general, and the governor, by basically 10 points, 10-point victories. So that is growing. In other words, the red wave did happen here, and it became more red, just like Florida, and not less red. So, in other words, the trend line is actually good right now for both Texas and Florida. They're becoming more Republican. There's no way around that fact. You can prove it in a variety of ways. One other thing, and I'll stop with the numbers, is when what worried a lot of the establishment here is when Beta, who just got laughing stock now, he just got slaughtered.
Right.
But when he first ran, that was scary, right?
Sure.
Ted Cruz had an interesting campaign, to say the least. I mean, it wasn't even like there you could have faulted some of the things that happened with him as well. But let's say it's it was a scary sign. The statistics on that, this poll that I always go back to and more people know about, showed that people who'd been in Texas for more than 6 years voted for Beto over people who'd been in Texas less than 6 years, who were more likely to vote against him. So it is just not true that the flow of people leads in one direction. And then finally, I mean, if we want to talk about this, we can. I think it's actually up to people in the state now to take measures that can prevent this, and it can be prevented. And really, DeSantis is the best model for that. Message the right way, and you'll get what Salesforce said here about abortion when the abortion laws were triggered because Roe v. Wade was overturned. Salesforce told all its people, if you want to move from Texas, we'll help you move because of the abortion law. And of course, I'm sitting there. I think we should give a tax credit as well. We should subsidize moving these people out of here. I'm all about it.
Wow.
And why did that happen? Because when you do the right thing, it's gonna signal in this environment, this as opposed to that. So
right.
I don't think it's not a problem, but I'm not as worried about it as other people.
Okay. That's fair. And I appreciate you backing it up with some stuff, some polling. Do you ever get people telling you that they're concerned about you from California? Or do you ever feel that
well, it's like someone said on the internet when everyone was looking for a place to move in the last couple of years during the midst of the madness.
Yeah.
They told a story about like going, it's like some seeing some place in a mountain state that had like crystals and everyone welcome here, and then driving to another town where someone yelled out a slur at him because he had a California license plate. And he said, only want to move where they yell at me for it.
Yeah,
And
there you go.
I kind of felt the same way. Like
That's
I
hilarious.
don't want to go where they welcome the plate. I want them to be mad that I'm here. I think that
Yeah.
people realize right away, like I say, like I'm the one you want here. Trust me. And I
Right.
think more people here are tuning into the fact, like they've met people who have moved, who are like more belligerent than they are, who are helping inspire them to take action in local politics. And one of the best phrases for it I heard, it was when I was in Florida. Someone said, you know, all these blue state refugees going to red states, they're like Cubans. Right. And we are, right. We're not going to, I say like this, look, this state of Texas is my own personal Alamo. I don't
Yeah.
plan on going anywhere. Maybe I buy, multiple houses or something, but I'm not planning on leaving Tech. This is the Alamo for now. We
Right.
stay, we fight and die here. And
Yeah.
so I think people they're increasingly getting that. They respect that, they get to know people who are coming like that, and they kind of see it as a genre. But certainly like the one thing that I would get, because they'll know where I stand pretty quick talking to me. The one thing is, of course, you have to be respectful of the fact that, and I don't, what the hell do I know about Texas politics? Like I know enough about, well, how local politics works and state politics works to know like there's a lot to know.
Yes.
Scene, and if you don't know the scene, you
Yeah.
got to be quiet about certain things
Sure.
so you figure it out. So there has to be a healthy kind of humility, and you might be right about some of what needs to be done, but how to do it is not something you're going to know unless you really know what's going on in the scene, and you won't know that without other people helping you, or you spending some time and observing and not.
Yes, there you go.
No.
That's exactly right. I mean, I've spent a lot of time in local politics here, and there is a lot to know. And oftentimes, the most important things to know are not and on any website.
Yes.
You won't be able to find it
Yes.
because it's not there. And if you went into the public records, you might be able to find some things, but you can't find it on a website or something like that.
No, exactly.
So what's when you're with your everyday life right now, what's your life like? What do you, are you a night owl? Do you get up early? Does it vary?
Well, I have to tell
You
you,
have coffee. What do you have for breakfast? What do you, what's a typical day like for you? Or is there such a thing?
um, well, over the last 2 years, it was, get up, not super early, like 7, 8 o'clock, and go through a bunch of work stuff, bad habit I'm trying to break, in bed, like pull out the laptop and start, and that would be like
Really,
email,
before coffee? You do that
work.
before
Oh
coffee?
yeah, before coffee, I just right away. And then
You don't need coffee in the morning?
no, and then I'd go. I
Oh,
don't anymore. Actually, I don't. Um, it helps sometimes, but
okay.
I like coffee, but I don't know. I don't have to have it every day. So I go to my home office, and I'd usually have like a couple calls or some kind of Zoom thing or whatever, and then I get into the office at 10. I'd be there till like 6 or 7, come back, eat, maybe hang out with the kids, maybe do some more work, and then in bed I'd like be checking things. And that was kind of my schedule. And then I would travel a lot too. So it was pretty much nonstop. But I made it so it wasn't like horrendously unpleasant for the last 2 years. And we built a lot of different things at New Founding. Now I'm transitioning out of that to something else I can't really announce yet. So I'm in this hilarious interim period where my kids are like, do you have a job? Are you looking for a job? Because I'm working from home all day, and
That's funny.
it's a pleasure to do this. So, I mean, it's been a wild like burst of energy to create a lot of different things. Like some of the media, like Return, is an interesting new brand talking about tech that's also friendly with Christianity and the right. and not opposed to it, right? I mean, that's
What's
pretty
it called
interesting.
again? Return?
Return,
Okay.
return.life. It's on Substack too. They just moved it to Substack. Interesting brand on tech. Really, the right doesn't have anything like, and I fostered that by bringing James Polis over, and it's a guy John Stokes who's very interesting on Twitter. He's a tech guy on this stuff, and they've kind of run Return. I think interesting things are going to happen with that brand in the future. It's a really important subject. Digital technology is obviously behind a lot of the changes we see. Whoever controls it controls the world, and it's the most powerful tool human beings have right now. So creating that 0 to 1 is not easy.
Yeah.
I didn't have to do the hard work on that. James did, and the rest of the
Okay.
team. But that's good. And then Align, ALIGN. I don't know what the address is now. It's probably Align at New Founding. Let me see. But Align is a brand also that is going to grow, I think, in some very interesting ways. Yeah, align.newfounding.com. And the idea of the line was, let's just connect people to products and services from people who don't hate them.
What a concept. What
Crazy,
a
right?
concept.
Yeah.
I
And let's
love
not.
that tagline. I love that tagline. Buy from people that don't hate you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That was our tagline, I think, before anyone else. We had, don't stop buying products and services from people who hate you. Don't buy from
It's a
people.
little abrasive. So how do you, if someone said, wait, hate, what do you mean by it? Hate?
What's funny is no one ever asks.
They just
People
know
either get
immediately.
it or they don't, and if they get it, and the rest of that ad, the first ad we ran that got hundreds of thousands of people subscribed, was the first ad we ran was an ad that said that stop buying from people who hate you, but the rest of it was all positive. It was like a happy family and a picture, and it was like learn about all this positive stuff.
Was
And
this a
my rule,
TV ad? Was it on TV?
no, it's just a Facebook ad. It was just
Oh, it's
a
a Facebook ad. Okay.
static graphic. And my rule for this with the writers was you can mention bad things happening in America, but only as a hook to turn around with a solution. Excuse me.
Right.
So like they're canceling people with banking. Well, here are 5 different financial institutions that won't cancel you.
Oh,
And that's the kind of thing that I think people need. People also need, like, how do I live my life? I think one of the interesting things about your own journey for a lot of people is going to be like, how do I deal with this crazy situation, right? In
yeah.
California, how do I live in North Korea, as a Christian? I mean, and what do I do when I'm there? How do I help the people there? How do I help the kids in the classroom? Like, people want to know, uh, you know, how to act, like how to live in this crazy time. And I think Align is a lifestyle brand that will grow into that. And there's, goodness, there's like 700,000 people, I think, on that list we're playing with now.
Wow.
And some core, at least three to 400,000 people in the core list of engaged people who read the content fairly regularly. And so there's a lot that can be done with that. And then, Firebrand, we created a super PAC basically to do edgy media for the right. Tom Klingenstein is the board chair of the Claremont Institute. We did a whole video series with him initially called The War, which got a lot of attention. It was very well done, if I do say so myself. Again, I just put together the right people, and they did the amazing work. But that media team will be making content for a C4 called Firebrand Action that will continue education and advocacy, kind of edgy stuff on the right, pushes the messaging forward. And I mean, think that that
When
could.
you say edgy, what do you mean by edgy?
I mean, it. Well, we first off, we directly attack the right as well as the left. We were dinging people who we didn't think were saying the right things on the right. And many of these senators, for instance, pretty terrible in my opinion. And pushing them to think about these things in the right way. So, for once, and it's not everyone's cup of tea because not everyone agrees with me, right? But one example is the DeSantis Martha's Vineyard thing. People called it a stunt. I thought it was pretty interesting. I thought it was pretty great. And when he sent the people there, we did a video that is pretty sharp, and it just goes, praises Martha's Vineyard, the people of Martha's Vineyard, for taking the right action,
Hmm.
which is identify the problem, realize you can't actually ingest these people into the society right now. So identify it as a problem, and ultimately deport them as soon as possible back to where they came from. With law enforcement, I mean, they did a great job. Martha's Vineyard is a great example to the rest of the country of what should be done. So, we had fun with that. And guys like Dan Bongino, I think, saw that one and liked it. And it's weird because in some ways, I think the right needs to soften. In other ways, it needs to harden. But I like fostering a team of creative people who usually get screwed in this environment, who can make interesting stuff for the sake of politics. And now with a C4, it's less about candidates. It was always kind of about issues. So I like having a team of people, and at a high level, I work on it too. Just how do we message things the right way, and how do we experiment with that? I think that's valuable and it's important, and we need people trying it. We need to fund the kids who are good at this. So that's
Yeah.
the C4. Now, my team could create a separate production company. I'm thinking about that now, with the team who made that media, because there's other people who want us to make stuff, and I want to keep them going along those lines. So, those are all little things, but Courage is a Habit is a nonprofit that came from one of our employees that we spun out, Alvin, who's fighting the CRT stuff. The Talent Network, over the last few years, just transitioning to do other things I'll announce soon, but there's I don't know, 2,000 plus people. Maybe I'm speaking out of school, like who are incredible, like business talent, right? Executives and whatever, who want to work for non-crazy people. That could be its own company. I think New Founding is probably going to focus on more of that and connecting capital to entrepreneurs moving forward. But it was a burst of energy. A lot of things were created, and I'm proud of it. And I think that this is a movement. And so there's a lot of opportunity and hope for people who see what's going on and want to be involved in some way. I think it's going to get easier for people to see how they can fit in and what they can do. And there's going to be more investors and donors who also see the scene as well. And I have lived that every day. Like I see a lot of talented people who are literally saying, like, what should I do? How can I, merge my career with something meaningful, and help fight whatever this thing is, that they can't even quite define, this Borg, this woke thing, or and so we're not,
Yeah.
resistance hasn't really started in earnest. I mean, a lot of people are just starting to really take action. And I think, I think we'll see some interesting things in our lifetime, and both for you personally and me personally, I think there's a lot of opportunity, as bleak as things, look in some ways. When you look around the cabin at this country, there's good things happening, and people are
Mm.
not, they're looking. It's an organizational problem. Like the talent is there. They want to create new media, new tech, new finance, new education, but there's the momentum building, but it has to, everyone has to connect, and that's a
Yeah.
big part of what needs to happen next.
And feel the freedom to do it too, because I think there's a lot of conditioning that what
Yes.
you're doing is going against that conditioning, right? You're almost like retraining people about freedom, like what you're saying about putting the pistol in the pocket, like, or saying whatever you want to say, whatever you think is true in the restaurant. Um, I'm excited about what you're doing. I think it's fascinating, and anything that has like a hopeful tone, which it does seem like it does, is a really a breath of fresh air to me. Um, I wanted to ask you one final question about self-care, because I ask everybody, I'm always interested in whether people take a Sabbath. Do you take a Sabbath? Because I'm really worried about entrepreneurs that work like 7 days a week, and I would be just as worried if you were like out there murdering people or stealing or
Yeah.
committing
Look.
adultery or lying about being all the rest of the Ten Commandments. But
Yeah.
it's there
Yeah.
for a reason. I mean, God did command command it because He cares for us and wants us to. So, do you take a Sabbath? And is that something you as an entrepreneur? I know you can work like 7 days a week, but
Well, yeah. So I mean, I'm even if I'm not an entrepreneur, by the way, even if like I think what I'm let me say this real quick. I think one of the hardest things I ever did was try to teach 4 classes a quarter, like a 4-4-4-4. Uh,
Brutal.
and a lot of them were new when I was designing them. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing was crazy.
Yeah. It's brutal.
And there's no assistant or whatever. And I will say, like, I've worked all kinds of jobs from, menial physical jobs to, fancy stuff, whatever. And I, I never, I was trying to do something that was actually impossible, like do a good job at doing that, in all ways. And I've never worked like that in my life. It's one of the first times
Yeah.
and the only time as an adult, I fell asleep, and missed morning class because I've been up all night, trying to get the work done. So,
Wow.
uh,
Wow.
I don't think it matters what it is. It's a relationship that you have to work, that can become a crutch. It can become something that some personality types will use to avoid family or uncomfortable, things they need to talk about within themselves, whatever. So yes, I've been guilty of breaking that, I think, over the last 2 years. But I will tell you, one thing I did to establish the Sabbath was we generally go to church, we go to mass the same time, like 11 o'clock in the mornings on Sunday. And then after that, it's become a ritual where unless some big thing is going on, we go out to eat as a family and we take our sweet time. And so we go out, and we argue about where we should go. It's not always the same place, but we go out and we take our sweet
What place
time.
is it? I now have to
Oh
ask.
no, it's not always the same place.
McDonald's? Oh, it's
I
not
like the
always the
ranch.
same place.
I
Okay,
like
I
the
got
ranch in Las Colinas a lot. It's a great place. You don't need reservations, and it's big and it's good food. But we, they have everyone has their favorite place, and just the blessing of being able to do that has been enormous for all of us. And what I love about it is, my kids protect it as much as we do. Like I thought, we'd be the
you.
ones
Wow.
protecting, but 16, 12, 10, and 5-year-old, they get very upset if they hear of anything like breaking in. Like even if we're gonna
Oh,
have people over or something, like what, this is our time.
wow.
So
That's a huge compliment to you.
so I just
They
yeah,
love you.
it's so great. It's
Wow.
so great that they defend that time, uh,
Yes.
just like we do. And then we come
That's
back, and
cool.
we have got to the habit where usually it's kind of a chillaxed afternoon. You can take a nap if you want, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Uh, and and then there's really no open plan for Sunday evening to sort of revolve. So I feel like the baby step, I'd like to put even more rails around it. I'd like, especially for my own self, I think a lot of us as adults, we need to put rails around silence before the Lord. Like there needs to be, like I would love, and I personally love that. I mean, I'm the guy like staying you know, at church and don't want to leave kind of thing. I want the silence. And but if I don't do that for myself, and I lay down as guilty as anyone else, and I get on the doom scrolling,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You don't
and
want to do
it's
that.
then it's all over. So I'd like more guardrails, but that's the baby step we took. Is after mass, we all go take our sweet time at lunch, and nothing interferes with that.
And your mass and your church, does it have a rock band or anything like that? Is it one of those cutting edge
Uh,
post Vatican II?
no. I look, I grew up with that kind of music in Protestant world, non-denominational. I went to a lot of different churches, and um,
I hate it.
I have a lot of respect for um a lot of these things. Like I don't think
Mm.
like the charismatic movement is all a complete joke, right? Or
No, no, no.
but I do think that yeah, there's some problems with the entire Christian world and how it's developed in all its
Yeah.
branches, and it's all threatened by the same thing. So the church I go to, it's funny. It's University of Dallas. I shouldn't even be there a lot. I feel like because it's not a real parish. But a lot of families, if we're lazy, we can just go there, and it's around the corner. And what it does have is solid priest, solid stuff. And then the music, it's this ugly old chapel. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be saying this. People, some people really like it. It's a very modernist chapel. It feels like a cave to
Oh
me.
no.
Not my cup of tea. But you can see they've made these moves where they have some more traditional paintings and stuff. And the music is clearly they've made this move towards, not like it's not a Gregorian chant or anything, but it's like much more traditional music, which I love.
Hmm,
And
me too.
one of the things that blew my mind coming here was we have the Anglican Ordinariate here, which is the Anglicans who the Catholic Church is like, hey, you can come aboard with us again. It's cool. Like you guys, you've kept things up. Like you can come back
Hmm.
to the Catholic Church. And so these are Catholic Anglicans basically, and they're
Hmm.
allowed to keep their own traditional rite. And it blows my mind. I'm like, this is the solution. Because the Catholics have these, complain about too modern of the liturgy and the words and everything. We actually reread the Bible every day. They recite the Bible 3 times in church, right? But outside of that, like, what do you say and what do you do? Well, the language is all beautifully like worn English from that's traditional, right? From the
Right.
Anglican that's alive, but it's also English, right?
Yeah.
Which then speaks to me, like it moves me because I'm thinking,
Yes.
wow, centuries of these people in the West who spoke English like hammered out this traditional language, and there's some Latin in it too, which is great because it's universal, but it's in English and it's trad.
Hmm.
Why don't we require this everywhere? I don't know. And they
When
also
you
have
say trad, what do you mean by that?
well in the Catholic world, um, the language and kind of some of the ceremony, right, changed over time. And
Yeah.
there's some more traditional ways to approach the way you speak about these things and the way you
Okay.
order, so more trad that way. And look,
Gotcha.
I'm probably, it's hilarious for me to say this because I am the guy who's like, no, I don't want my kids when they, again, this is hilarious because I don't even say anything about them. If we go to the church, right? And this is hilarious to end with this. We go to the church like on Sunday. It's Sunday evening. Sometimes we could, or traveling or whatever. We go to this church and they have the drums and they have like, the guitar and everything. And I'm looking over at my kids and they're like, what is this? Like making like this is crazy. Like this is you gotta be
That's
kidding me.
awesome.
And I'm the
That's
guy
awesome.
who has this old like roots from when I was younger, like remembering some of the old Protestant songs. And I'm like, this kind of moves me a little bit right now. Like,
Uh-huh.
I feel the spirit of the Lord. And I look over, my kids are like, this is bunk. Like
Wow. That's great. Where can people find you to connect with you?
Best place is Twitter. If you just go to at Doc MJP DOC MJP on Twitter, you can find Matthew J Peterson there. And if
Okay.
you just DM, I call I'll give you my email from that, and then we can go from there. And that's how I filter things.
That's very good. All right. Well, thanks, Matt, for hanging out and spending time with us.
Always good. It's been too long. We've known each other for a
Yeah.
while and been through some similar experiences. One thing we have to talk about next time is the show I want to co-produce with you called Adjuncts,
Oh, yes. That's
which
that's
is your
delightful that
idea,
you
I
remembered
believe.
that. Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah, I've never forgotten it. Great.
I have it on my notes to mention during this time that we had, and I missed mentioning it for some reason. So it's delightful to hear that you remembered that, and I actually think there's something to it.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm writing a novel right now called The Adjunct, and
Ha! Ha! Yes.
it's a long project. I'm I'm excited about. So we'll have to talk more about it.
Great. Well, let me know how I can help you and in any way. And I have to I actually have to run now.
Okay,
Uh,
we'll stop now then.
so these guys got the live in and out of us, but good stuff.
Okay.